Greetings, traveler, and have a seat by the fire. Today we are continuing the Crimson Pilgrimage, leading up to the events of the Hallowtide Skirmish Game. Tonight, we are checking in on a troubled musician so desperate for inspiration he begins to listen to the strange music of the night. Soon finds that such inspiration comes at a horrible price. Tonight's episode is Music of the Spheres, written and performed by Christopher Bungie. I used to be a musician. No, that isn't quite right. I used to be musical. Being a musician requires devotion and recognition. I just laid claim to my late father's violin and have suffered from insomnia since I was a small boy. After his passing, I made a challenge to work through all of his leftover sheet music. I would toil into the late hours, sawing away at the strings, fueled by my own grief. It must have been hell for my mother, not only to deal with her precocious son's clumsy attempts at melody in the dead of the night, but also be reminded of what she had lost by such crude duplication. I can still remember how he played, his eyes closed and a smile on his face as his fingers worked the strings. The bow looked like a surgeon's scalpel in his hand, held so delicately, but wielded with cutting precision. I used to believe that he had memorized all his favorite music, but after going through every last page, I found my cherished memories nowhere among them. The truly beautiful music was all in his head, and it flowed through him into his instrument. Now, here I was, once again, well past the 13th hour of the night, staring at a blank page while holding the violin numbly in my fingers. Nothing moved through me, no great melody stirred, and I felt like a charlatan, a foolish boy, even at the age of 20, dressed up in his father's clothes and playing pretend. Fingers slid down my shoulders, causing me to jump with surprise before relaxing into my Hannah's embrace. You move like a spectre, my love, I say as I reach up, place my hands over her arms. I thought you had gone to sleep hours ago.
I woke up thirsty. I thought I would come check on you. Are you still having trouble coming up with a song?
She leaned close to kiss the side of my cheek. There's no accusation in her voice, but it stung like a slap nonetheless. You can always just play one of those pieces from your father's collection. I shook my head so violently that Hannah had to lean back to avoid our cheeks colliding. No, that won't do at all. The High Harvest Festival is all about hope for the future, kindling a bright light that will lead us through the darkness to come. If I take the stage and play them something they have heard before, from me or someone else, they will all write me off as some hack who's better served cooping barrels than making music,
This isn't about the crowd, is it?
Hannah said, her voice taking on that slight pitying tone that she always got when she knew my ego was already bruised and wished to avoid breaking it.
It's about my parents and your apprenticeship.
I exhaled slowly and nodded. I know there is no shame in making barrels or carpentry, but I feel myself dwindling there every day. It's not like I'm going to stop. I'm grateful to Dietmar for giving me useful trade, but I need this too. I need to create something other than just bottles and buckets.
Just don't kill yourself doing it.
She gave me one last parting squeeze and headed off to bed. I watched her leave, keeping the most honest words to myself. Anna is a beauty from a good family, who had more than her fair share of suitors. Warner continued to persist with his affections despite our vows, going out of his way to drop in or bump into her at the market. He was tall, with strong build from working the fields. I knew that they had been close when they were younger, and if he hadn't dipped into my wife's pool in the past, he had certainly played in its shallows. What did I have to even the odds against a visually superior man? Just an ostentatious bit of wood, and the false aura of having a creative soul. I placed the violin against my chin and drew the bow against the strings, starting with a single sustained note. I played an old song I knew from memory. I hadn't played 100 times before. If Hannah were still awake, she might even believe I was making something new. As I began to play, concern for my wife's perception fell away as I stepped into familiar rhythm. I tried closing my eyes, willing myself to feel the shape of the thing as my father had. The way it could be filled by a song, and be far more its servant than its master. All too soon, I finished the melody, and my eyes opened again to realize that I had yet another visitor. Outside my window, I make out the silhouette of dark wings flapping in the night. Several bats flitted past and repeated patrols of my sill. Puzzled, I stepped closer to see what drew the creature's attention so. As soon as I approached, holding a candle from the side table high to give my eyes some purchase in the inky blackness outside my window, I found that the wings disappeared from my view. Searching the night, my attention was drawn to the gnarled, dead tree that stood outside my window. As my gaze traveled its branches, the light of my candle hit the yellow eyes of one of the bats hanging there. The creature cocked its head regarding me, lips pulling back in a chiropteran snarl before letting out a shriek so piercing I was forced to cover my ears in surprise. And I let the candle fall to the ground at my feet. Another bat joined the first, and then another. What started as a wail found a harmony to it, and I was keenly aware this nocturnal melody was usually far beyond human perception, but I had been included in this midnight choir by some strange providence. I stumble backwards, not daring to take my eyes off the window lest the creature disappear entirely, and my hand finds the violin where I had left it. Lifting it back to my shoulder, I reply using my own instrument. The bow sails against the strings to join organically with the singing of the bats in an impossible composition. It was in that moment, for the first time in my life, that I felt the music flow through me unrestrained by my stumbling thoughts or clumsy fingers. It was the bats that were the conductors, I merely an instrument to channel their music into this realm. But the entire experience was transcendent in a way that stole me out of space and time. When the bats silenced their song, I came back to myself and noted dazedly that the dropped candle had found the edge of a curtain and was beginning to catch fire. I moved quickly to stomp out the flame, but by the time I had ended that danger, the bats would resort back to the night that spawned them. Yet the music remained fresh in my head, and I quickly bent to paper to write it down before it could escape me. The next morning, I awoke with the press of Hannah's lips against my own, and was greeted by her sparkling eyes looking down on me.
I heard you playing last night. It was the most beautiful music.
Did you hear the singers? I mumble before my brain can properly catch up with my words.
Singers?
She cocks her head in unconscious pantomime of the bats. My mouth opens to explain, but I shut it quickly, realizing how mad the whole thing would sound. Sorry, a memory from a dream. I kissed her again, still any further questioning.
Well, you'd better wake up quickly. I know you were up late, but Dietmar expects you at the cooperage within the hour. My father is not a patient man, and I doubt my vouching for the quality of music will help. But if you play like that at the festival, you may just change the opinion on musicians forever.
The rest of the day was spent working on barrels and casks, my inexpert fingers further dulled from lack of sleep, and my mind on the events of the night. Dietmar, a burly and single-minded man, very similar in construction to his barrels, kept eyeing me with increasing frustration as he was forced to correct my work. Still, I couldn't be bothered to focus on this earthly pine when I had recently experienced something far beyond it. That night, after I'd seen Hannah to bed, I had once again returned to the study and my violin, looking out the window. My heart sinks as I see no muses resting in the old dead tree outside. Instead, I turn and walk back to my desk to locate the scribbled sheets I had penned the night before. As I place the violin beneath my chin and set to playing, I once again notice the dark wings in the glass and hear the voices join my strings. I felt it return, that blessed feeling of dissociation, as my mind slips away. It was as if I was looking down on my body as I hovered somewhere above it. I had never been much impressed by the artistry of my creation. Too thin by half and far too sharp. Yet here, possessed as I was by the melody, music enacted its beauty through me, tuning my body to the infinite. I'm not sure how long I played that evening, but the more I played, the more the rest of the world seemed to recede until I swayed there, surrounded by naught but a womb of shadow. Things moved within that shadow, and although I did not know their shape, I felt no terror. I knew they loved the music as I did, and as long as I played, I had nothing to fear. It was just before dawn that I finally finished. I hadn't been aware of my exertions, but I found that I was dripping with sweat by the time I collapsed into bed next to my wife, my breath coming in greedy gulps as my heart beat frantically like a caged bird inside my chest. My life continued in that cycle for the next week, muddling through my working hours in exhausted haze, only to find myself renewed with the setting of the sun, and playing into the morning hours. I was aware Dietmar was far from satisfied with my work, but he had stopped correcting me. I think he sensed some change in my demeanor, and took to following behind rather than press me any further. I was not sure if he feared for my fragility or my mania, but I cared little for his myopic judgment. It was the Wren day, before the harvest festival, when Hannah came to me just as I sat down to play. She wrapped her arms around my shoulders as she often did, but I could feel the weight of fatigue in her embrace.
I've been having such ruinous dreams.
She whispered into my ear. What do you mean, my love? I said, turning to her face and seeing for the first time the dark circles there.
I see them all there, in my mind, all the beautiful things we have built. The highest towers that gleam like silver, walls of purest marble, and then I hear it, like the whistle of a dangerous wind, and the cracks start to appear. They're small, but they spread so fast. One moment the tower stands tall, the next it falls to the ground and shatters like glass into 1,000 pieces.
I'm sorry you've been sleeping so poorly. I wish to help, but there's little I can do to cure dreams.
Scream, you know.
She looks from me to the window.
You just can't hear it beyond your music, but they are screaming.
After this, Hannah fell silent, and I make sure that she gets a nip of whiskey before taking her to bed and tucking her in. I stayed with her until I'm sure that if she is properly asleep, her breathing steady and her face still, untroubled by foul portents. With my husbandly duties discharged, I run quickly to my study and snatch at my violin. The bats were already beating their wings against the window, impatiently waiting to start the night's performance, and I mouth an apology before setting my bow to string again. It was the evening of the harvest festival, with all my prior anxiety replaced by giddy excitement unlike anything I had felt before, when Hannah came to me in a state. While I was dressed in my father's best suit, my beloved was still in her nightgown. The circles round her eyes had become pits, and the luster of her skin had been replaced by a sickly grayness.
You cannot perform tonight.
Hannah said, not a challenge or rebuke, a simple statement of fact. What do you mean? This is what I've been practicing every night for. This is the chance you gave me to prove that I have real talent beyond barrels and casks. I could not keep the edge of frustration and panic from my voice.
The music you play is not meant for this world. It changes everything it touches.
She reaches out and caresses the side of my face.
It's changed you,
Hannah whispered, and then pulled her hand back to place it on her chest.
and it's changing me. We are just little people, Adelar. We are cracks, little cracks, and if we spread, we will bring everything toppling down.
I take a moment to steady my nerve and breathe out my building anger before replying. I'm sorry I have troubled you so. I reached out and took her hand in mine, pulling it close. You've always loved music, and you have always believed in me. Can you believe in me for just one more night?
It's not music, it's a cancer, Adelar. It shows us all the empty parts of ourselves until we can't take it anymore.
You just don't hear it, my dearest. Mother Hand finds Hannah's ways. Just dance with me, and I know you will feel it as I have.
But there is no music.
Hannah's head lolls to one side and regards me with a fatigued, questioning look. Just just listen, I whisper as I pull her close, my hand to find its place on her back. I close my eyes and hear the bats begin to sing, the violin no longer necessary to feel the melody carry me, and by extension, my beloved. You must feel it now, as I lead her around the floor of the study. The sublime beauty, the connection to something beyond ourselves. I swear I could even make out the silver moon high in the heavens, vibrating to our divine frequency. I open my eyes, expecting to see Hannah overcome by the same rapture that holds me, but instead I see her face frozen in a rictus of horror as she lay limply in my arms, blood trickling freely from both her ears as she stares out the window.
The cracks, I feel them inside me, feel them in my bones.
She whispers, the corners of her lips vibrating. She found her strength again and clutches my shoulders hard enough to drive her nails in my skin.
You must stop, Adelar. You must be stopped. Some songs were not meant for human ears.
I can't stop. I grasped her back, staring into her eyes and willing her to understand what I was accomplishing. This is the first worthwhile thing I have ever done. Can't you see I was chosen? I shake her side to side, harder than intended. They've been singing this entire time, but nobody could hear them. I am the instrument that translates their song to this sphere. Hannah gives me a look of such humbling pity as she slowly extricates herself from my grasp.
I need to stop this. I'm sorry, my love. I can't let you play this. I will talk to my father. I will talk to the festival organizers. You cannot take the stage.
She turns from me, and in a fraction of a second, I am seized by pure panic that my moment will be snatched from my fingers. Reaching for a small knife I keep on the stand by the door, I drive it downward into my Hannah's shoulder, dropping her to the ground. Before I had even realized what was happening, I was on top of her, stabbing down with the knife again and again in a frenzy. All the while, I can still hear the bats, their song crescendoing loud enough to block out my wife's screams. Their frantically beating wings sounding like applause in my ears. As I slowly returned to myself, I looked down at the crumpled body before me, but it barely registered. I knew that I'd be late for the concert if I didn't hurry. My motions automatic, my consciousness piloting my own weightless body as if in a dream. Standing, I grabbed my traveling cloak and buttoned it up to cover my bloodstained vest before retrieving my violin from the case and making my way toward the door. By the time I made it to the town square, they were already waiting for me. The young man, serving as master of ceremonies, was in the process of excusing my absence and moving on to another performance. But I shouted and waved my hands frantically to announce my arrival. I must have been too fervent because the man was taken aback and eyed me carefully as if doubting my fitness to put on stage. Still, I would not be denied. My wife could not take this moment from me. I would be damned if some young nobody in oversized suit would stop me now. Take the violin from the case and turn to face my friends and neighbors. Tonight, we celebrate the harvest. We sing, we drink, and we make merry to light a candle in ourselves that will carry us through the coming darkness. However, there is beauty in that darkness too. It was when I strayed from the light into those dark paths that I found my muse.
I start to play. As the bow slid across the strings, I could feel the melody slicing through the gathered crowd as surely as a knife had pierced my Hannah. All talk ceases at once. Even the most bored youth turning to face me, mouth hanging open in slack amazement as the song collides with their senses. And they weren't the only ones listening. I feel the bats before I see them. Dozens of wings beat the air at once, creating a powerful downdraft as they descend upon the crowd before me. As they fly, they sing with me until our melody fills up every secret nook and hidden cranny of the entire village. I could feel it as I closed my eyes. Each spirit our harmonies touch begins to vibrate with the sound, faster and faster as I play, producing wild exhalations of rapture until the cracks start to form. Some drop to their knees, staring dumbstruck. Others dancing wildly with no regard for the limits of their bodies. And still others were seized with destructive fervor, causing them to lash out their surroundings and fellow revelers. Still, I continued. This is all part of the performance. My part in the final record.